Following service in the Norwegian Merchant Navy and Air Force, Nils Christensen developed a reputation for his vast knowledge and skill in aircraft service and maintenance. As the founder of Viking Air Limited, his legacy has continued the work of de Havilland Canada in contributing to the Canadian aviation industry. Born in Norway in 1921, Nils Christensen was destined to come to Canada and build his reputation in the aviation industry. But first, he joined the Norwegian Merchant Navy in 1939, sailing on Norwegian and Allied ships during the Second World War, and in 1942 transferred to the Royal Norwegian Air Force and came to Canada to train as an aircraft mechanic, arriving at the Little Norway Training Camp in Toronto, where he began to experience life as an airman in Canada, as well as becoming adjusted to life in the barracks and experiencing how Canadians adapt to winter. In Canada, Nils began to hone his skills as an aircraft engineer and acquire skills in aircraft maintenance that would serve him well in the future. In Canada, Nils met the young Crown Prince Harold when he was visiting Little Norway with his parents. 60 years later, Nils would meet him when he was King Harold V. Returning to Norway in 1943, Nils served with the Air Force as a flight engineer and in England trained as an air gunner, then flew on Catalinas with 333 Squadron as a flight engineer and air gunner in convoy duty and submarine patrol. Following the war, the skills he learned in Canada and England were put to use in commercial aviation, in aircraft service and maintenance. And in 1951, Nils immigrated to Canada, working first at de Havilland on Lancaster conversion for air-sea rescue. A year later, Nils was hired by Keith Messenger of Sioux Airways in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, maintaining Norseman and Cessna aircraft. After the war, in 1947, Nils had qualified to earn his Norwegian flight mechanic's license, and in 4 years at Sioux Airways, he earned his Canadian aircraft maintenance engineer license, serving as chief of maintenance on aircraft such as the Republic Seabee and other popular bush planes. Even today, Nils maintains a current AME license, one of the first members inducted into the Canadian Aircraft Maintenance Engineers Hall of Fame. In 1956, Nils became Chief of Maintenance at the Victoria Flying Club in British Columbia, where he serviced both club aircraft as well as Harvards and Beech 18s of the Naval Air Reserve Squadron. Now a Canadian citizen, in 1959 he joined Forest Industries Flying Tankers, where he worked on the giant Martin Mars water bombers. Then, in 1965, he started with Ferry Aviation, servicing a variety of aircraft, including Catalinas, Beechcraft, Harvards, and DC-3s, as well as converting Cansos, Mitchells, and other types to operate as water bombers. 2 years later, at McKinnon Enterprises, he became manager, rebuilding Grumman Goose and Widgeons, earning the name of Goose Doctor. With the closure of McKinnon in 1970, Nils started his own company with 3 employees, Viking Air Limited, located in a wartime hangar at the Victoria Airport. He also bought Victoria Flying Services, adding it to the company, and in 1971 donated a Vickers Viscount to the Canadian Forces Fire Service for training purposes. While president of Viking Air, Nils Christensen obtained parts manufacturing rights from de Havilland for Beaver and Otter aircraft, ensuring that parts would continue to be made in Canada. Since leaving Viking Air when he retired in 1987 and sold his interest in the company, Nils has seen Viking grow to nearly 600 employees in Sydney, BC and Calgary, Alberta, and acquire type certificates for 7 de Havilland aircraft, the Chipmunk, Beaver, Otter, Caribou, Buffalo, Dash, and now building twin Otters, as well as converting Beavers to turbopower. In 45 years of active service, Nils earned a stellar reputation for his knowledge and skills, not only in service and maintenance, but in converting and rebuilding several types of aircraft when he was called upon for assistance in recovering aircraft from difficult situations to be put back in the air, and was a founding member of the BC Aviation Museum in Victoria. He was original crew chief on the restoration of the museum's Norseman, which was completed in 2003. After living in Canada for over 60 years, Nils has not forgotten his Norwegian roots, and his travels back to Norway have taken him to his parents' home, now occupied by a third generation of the family. In November 2011, Nils returned to Norway for the rechristening of the merchant ship Hestmanden, built in 1911 and restored after serving in 2 world wars. The rechristening of the ship gave Nils the opportunity to meet King Harold, whom he had first met in Canada when the king was a young boy visiting the Little Norway training camp in Canada during the war. When the war ended, Nils was a member of the Catalina crew that brought German officials to Norway to sign papers of surrender. As a former sailor and airman and longtime Canadian Legion member, Nils continues to honor those who served during the war. And to honor those who served during the war, Nils has traveled to memorial services in Canberra, Australia, to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, to a memorial parade in Oslo, Norway, and has marched with veterans in a parade at Liverpool, England. During the war, Nils met his future wife Sheila, the daughter of Wing Commander William Wolfenden and his wife Ethel. Nils' parents were impressed that Sheila could speak Norwegian. He married her in 1947, and they had 3 children, Randy, Eric, and Marit. Following retirement, Nils and Sheila have lived on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, where his advice is still sought on aviation matters. Nils Christensen was inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in Montreal on June 14, 2012.